what's up, y'all? It's Carla, aka Sela the Poet, and I decided to do another video. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about feminism. I am a feminist, a proud feminist, and I'm going to talk about some of the reasonings why I espouse that philosophy. So let's talk about what feminism really is. So the definition of feminism, like I said in my last video, is a belief in the social, political, economic equality of the sexes. The goal of feminism is to challenge the systemic inequalities women face on a daily basis. So we live in a society that is patriarchal. Patriarchal means that basically the men control the government, the men control the companies. The men are basically in control of most of society, political leadership, moral authority, and control of property. On a grand scale, males are more in control of that than women. Also, what exists in society is something called misogyny. So for people that don't know what misogyny or misogynoir, now misogyny, I'm going to read that definition first. So misogyny is a hatred and a dislike and a prejudice directed at women. And in misogynoir, it's prejudice and hatred and contempt directed towards Black women specifically. So those two things exist in society. Now, a lot of people have the wrong idea that feminism hates men. Within feminism, a lot of people don't understand that there were different waves in the movements, and that there are different types of feminists. There are Marxist feminists, there are radical feminists, there are Black feminists, there are eco-feminists. There are different subsections of feminists within the movements that have and support agendas for different things. There are some womanists. There are just different types of feminists that support different agendas. I would consider myself a Christian feminist. And we have kind of a biblical worldview, meaning that we believe that men and women are equal in the eyes of God. And the agenda that we stand for is equal rights, an egalitarian society where men and women are treated equally. So the thing is in the type of society that I would think is egalitarian, I would think that men and women should have the same opportunities to do the same jobs, that they should get paid the same amount of money, that they should be able to, enjoy some of the same privileges on a balanced scale. I am in support of DNA testing. When a child is born, there should be a DNA test to establish paternity so that, to make sure that the father of the child is actually that child's father. I would support something like that. I would also support drafting of unmarried women, because the way that I see it is if men and women are both living in this country, then as long as we don't have a medical condition that keeps us from going to fight and to defend our country, I don't think that it should just be, men doing it. I think that women are capable of also fighting alongside men to be able to defend our country. So when I say equal rights for both, I support equal rights. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the things, the accomplishments of feminism that got us to this point. These are just some historical things that I found out through research. So I'm just going to kind of read some stuff. Okay, so in 1848, they passed the Married Women's Property Act. allowing women to own and control property. So, hundreds of years before that, there was a system here practiced called coverture, which meant that it was, I think, it came from England, common law England, and it was a system where women were considered property. Once they got married, they didn't have any legal identity. Their legal identity was basically swallowed by their husband, which is why the women changed the last name to the husband's name. And the man had full authority over her body. So he controlled her sex, sexual relations. He controlled even though the kids that came from her would belong to him, and he would be in control of them. And the women could not buy property, they could not sign contracts in their own name, they could not go to court without their husband's permission. They were confined to the home, and they weren't allowed to work. They some of them were not allowed to have an education or go to school. And so, because of that, it was basically breeding, the second class citizenship and inferiority of women. And because women were in that position, there began to be, a contempt for them. That's where misogyny came in. Patriarchy, they kind of just sometimes some ideas came from patriarchy, which were bad influences that spoke about women negatively. That women were stupid, that women weren't logical, that women were just emotional. All of those things came from the misogyny that came from a patriarchal system. Just this idea of women, this disrespectful idea of women, that woman could only be a certain thing, it could only be limited. It's kind of like the same way that African American slaves were treated here. When they came here, they called the African American slaves lazy. They said that they were good for nothing. They called them the N-word. They called them all types of names to, mentally beat them down to make them feel inferior. So it was the same thing with women. And I just think that misogyny is something that should not be tolerated, and it should be destroyed, because let me see if I can find the right words. It gets in the way of people seeing men and women as equals. If you already have this wrong idea that men are superior and women are inferior, it makes it kind of hard to kind of do activism, for equal rights for both sexes. Because if there's this idea that the women are inferior anyway, people are not going to go as hard to fight for women's rights and women's equality. So I'll continue reading just some other things. So the U.S. Homestead Act in 1862 made it easy for single divorced women to claim land in their own names for the first time. In 1872, the state of Illinois granted the freedom of occupational choice to both men and women. So back in the day, women could only get certain jobs like a nanny, a maid, a cook, a babysitter, and things of that nature, while men were able to be doctors, lawyers, and all the high-paying jobs kind of went to them, firefighters, police, and all of those things. They had full autonomy to go after those jobs, while women could only do certain types of work. And so the occupational choice gave both men and women the right, to have the same types of jobs. So I'll continue. And let's see. Okay. In 1963, the U.S. passes the first legislation for equal pay for equal work. It ended up being expanded in 1972 to salespeople, executives, and administrators. So there actually had to be a law and an act put in just so that there could be some type of equality when it came to pay wages. Because what would often happen is that women were paid way, way less than men, you know, and that wasn't really fair. Let's continue. So in the 1980s, that is when marital rape became a crime. So, you know, like I told you, during coverture, women were considered property and men had control over the sexual relations. So even if a woman didn't consent, it didn't matter. You know, the husband could actually be raping his wife or getting sex from her when she didn't want it. And so women were basically enduring maybe rapes and sexual assaults for years before anything could really be done about it. So it became it was able to be outlawed, or you know, put on the books that marital rape it's a thing and it's against the law. And it took a long time for that to come out. In 1993, the Family and Medical Leave Act became law. In 2007, there was a case called the Ledbetter versus Goodyear case, where women could sue for discrimination. In 1978 was the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, which kept women from being legally dismissed from a job for becoming pregnant. So there used to be a time in this country where if a woman got pregnant, they would just automatically fire her because she's going to have a child and have to take care of it. And they didn't want that. You know, the employers wanted somebody that's going to be constantly working. So protection was put in place for pregnant women that actually had to become a thing. So those are just kind of some of the things that, you know, the accomplishment that feminism and feminist activists were able to accomplish over the years. But as you can see, women had to basically go to court and fight, you know, for basic human rights. You know, the right to have the ability to have the same jobs, you know, to fight for the ability to have a fair wage or fair pay, you know, the right to not be fired just because you're a woman and just because you're pregnant. There were just so many, you know, things that women had to basically fight for just to be able to be seen as equal, you know, or to be treated fairly. And so, you know, I say these things just to kind of highlight that feminism is important. You know, all feminists are not man-hating. You know, we actually do care about the males in our society. We just want fair treatment. We just want equal access to the same opportunities that a man might have. You know, back in the day, you know, we were considered property, but now we're no longer considered property. You know, we should be able to be respected as equal human beings. We should be able to have some of the same privileges and some of the same just opportunities to work and to fight in war and to do all these different things. I don't know why, you know, this concept scares so many people, you know, because it's basically human rights that we're talking about here. You know, just the right to be able to be seen as an equal human being. That even if there are biological differences, for one gender to not be discriminated more than the other. You know, so I really don't understand. You know, I hear people talk about and incorrectly label feminists as man-hating and stuff, but we're not man-hating. What it is that feminists just want equal opportunities, and I don't think that that's wrong. I think that that's fair. You know, considering the society we live in, I just think that everybody should get an equal opportunity and an equal chance, you know, to make the same income, to be able to go to court, to get certain privileges. I don't see what's wrong with that. I don't see what's wrong with women mobilizing and getting together and looking out for women's interests. I mean, men do it. They have their corporations, they have their men's rights groups, they have MGTOW, they have all types of stuff. But so I just wanted to just talk a little bit more about feminism. Lately, I've just been thinking a lot about feminism, and I've just been thinking a lot about, why I chose to support it. And it's just all about balancing out power. It's just all about bringing balance to society. Society is a patriarchy. Society, it still has inequalities when it comes to women. Women still don't get paid the same amount as men. Men get paid more in certain jobs, and there's just certain things that women still have to fight for. So I'll end up making another video about this later, but I just wanted to kind of just, share my thoughts on feminism. All right, so I hope you guys have a good night and take care and stay safe during the pandemic. All right, and that's all I have to say for now. Peace.